Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hello and welcome back to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Peter Baracchini, and I am joined by my colleague and writer over at the Hockey Writers, Alex Hobson. And you may notice a bit of, a little team restructuring right now. Unfortunately, Kevin Armstrong is unable to do the show at the moment, but he is still with us in spirit, and you can still catch him and his writing over in the Maple Leafs section as always. And hopefully down the line, he's able to come back on the show. We always love to have him on, and he's just a fantastic guy to have on no matter what. And before we get into the show, if you weren't aware of what's going on right now, the Winter Olympics are happening. And with that comes hockey. And even though that there are no NHLers this year, the Hockey Writers has got you covered with everything Olympic hockey related, from team rosters, profiles, and much, much more. Big shout out to Greg Boysen for leading the coverage, and everyone who's been writing content on a daily basis has been doing a fantastic job. And speaking of the Olympics, we are a Maple Leaf show. There are no NHLers, again, as I mentioned, but Josh Ho-Sang is on Team Canada, and it was recently reported by Josh Clipperton that during line rushes, he was spotted on the top line with Eric Staal and Mason McTavish. And Alex, I don't know about you, but I am really excited to see how this is going to unfold. What is your initial take with Ho-Sang on the top line?
Well, it's going to be a great combination of veteran experience and youth. I mean, you've got Eric Staal, who's been he's been a household name for Team Canada for his entire career, essentially, whether it be the World Juniors or Olympic hockey, even the World Cup of hockey. And to have Ho-Sang alongside him, and then obviously you've got Mason McTavish, who, in our brief little look at the World Juniors this year before COVID kind of caused it to be postponed, he was Canada's best player, I would say. So to have Mason McTavish and on one wing and Josh Ho-Sang on the other, and then Eric Staal and all his wisdom and his experience to work with those two, I think it's going to make for a really dynamic top line, and it's a great opportunity for Ho-Sang from a Leafs perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there were talks about him looking to sign an extension or an NHL contract before the Olympics, but then the team was dealing with injuries, COVID. He dealt, I believe, with a concussion ahead of time as well before the Olympics, and they didn't want to squander the opportunity because based on his production right now, 11 goals, 9 assists, and 20 points in 27 games, he's been a force for the Toronto Marlies in the AHL. So the fact that they were able to give him that opportunity speaks volumes to the organization itself. And I'm like you said, to the dynamic of having the veteran experience of Staal, the young talent coming up in Mason McTavish and his power forward like game. And then you have Ho-Sang with his ability to be a crafty playmaker, and his shot is just purely on display at this point. I think it's really exciting to see with Team Canada right now. And given the amount of talent that they have, they're going to have depth throughout, but seeing McTavish, Ho-Sang, and Staal on that top line, I think it's something that can really do some damage.
Yeah, and it's really cool for Ho-Sang to be able to compete on this international stage like this, because if NHL players were in fact at the Olympics, we're not sure if Ho-Sang would have ever gotten an opportunity like this. But the fact that he's sort of making the best of this situation when there's no NHL players at the Olympics, and he's going to get an opportunity to not only represent Canada, but do it in a big way if he ends up staying on the top line. I think it'll be really cool and sort of give Leaf fans an idea of what to expect. Because I truly do think that whether it's before the trade deadline this year or not even until next year, we are going to see Josh Ho-Sang in a Leafs jersey at some point. And I think we're going to see a different version of him than the one that we saw with the Islanders back in the day.
That is something to look forward to, no doubt. I really, again, you just can't be happy enough for Ho-Sang with everything that he's gone through. He gets an opportunity right now, looked great in training camp, still lights out of the AHL, and now he's on the Olympic stage. I don't think you could have asked for a better comeback story than this. And, if obviously the end goal is a gold medal. If he comes back with that gold medal around his neck, that's going to be even more special, more motivating for him, and a great sign for the team heading forward. And speaking of the team going forward, we're in a bit of a break. The All-Star break happened. Auston Matthews and Jack Campbell represented the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I gotta say, I was excited for the skills competition. I was really excited to see Jack Campbell and Andrei Vasilevsky win that save streak competition. Campbell looked, he even saw a little bit shaky at first, but you know what? He came back just like Jack Campbell always does. And then Auston Matthews taking part in the 21 and 22, the blackjack game. I thought it was a really different take. I would have liked to see him in the shooting accuracy, but Alex, even in the actual All-Star game, what were your initial thoughts of them? And I'm not going to say performance because you know what, it's an All-Star game. You're just there to have fun, but just to have them there and the presence, and then just seeing the camaraderie and the friendship that they had between each other with all the posts online. It was just, it was just a great feeling to see.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to see how close those two guys are. And obviously, especially since how good of friends Freddie Anderson was with Matthews back when they were together. And I'm sure everybody saw that picture of Matthews posing with Campbell and Anderson again. And you know what? It's great to see how close they are and how much they get along. And it's kind of tough because these are two guys who have very important contract extensions coming up. And Campbell sooner than Matthews. But the hope for me is that the Leafs find a way to keep both of them, because clearly there's some serious friendship there, and clearly they like, especially Campbell. He seems like a guy who's just, I don't know. I don't want to be the guy to say, oh, he seems too nice to try and screw the Leafs out of a good deal. But at the same time, I also, just looking at him, he seems like he's one of the most genuine players I've ever listened to speak at the NHL level. And if the Leafs find a way to keep him, I truly hope that's the case, because you can tell that he's having a blast in Toronto. He loves his teammates, and if he ends up sticking around, that's about all you can ask for. So I hope that Dubas finds a way to make that work, because I think that chemistry is undeniable, and obviously the results on the ice have been great so far too.
I think the thing that got me the most was the fact that, they had that little interview going on and they were using Vegas terms in their post-game interviews. I think that was really fun to just try and slip that in there, as well as, the comments about heading the Red Lobster and stuff like that. So we all know.
I love hearing Campbell say it's Vegas, baby, in his post-game presser.
It's Vegas, baby. And you know what? I kind of like that challenge too, where they're just like, okay, you got to say this during your media availability. And that to me was just absolutely phenomenal, really fun. And again, it's a fun weekend. They're there to have fun, maybe take a step back, regroup with everything. And I can't remember who it was, but I think one of the coaches, I think it was Pete DeBoer, said that, he was still hungover, and you know what, you're in Vegas. So expect that to happen.
At least he admitted it.
Yeah. That really just blew up on social media. So that was interesting. Again, Vegas, it is what it is there. You know what to expect. And
happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas.
Exactly. I think maybe I should take a trip down at some point. I really need to cross that off my bucket list.
That's right.
Now, moving over from Campbell and Matthews at the All-Star game, let's focus in on some positive news, because I know that he's gotten a lot of heat, especially at the beginning of the season. Mitch Marner. We knew at the beginning of the season, production wasn't quite there, especially when Matthews was out. They needed someone to step up aside. John Tavares and William Nylander were playing great, but they needed more from their star winger in Marner. Fast forward to January 15th. Comes back from the COVID protocol. He initially had a shoulder injury, came back, played 2 games, didn't record anything, but still looked relatively okay. But during this streak right now, he is absolutely on a tear. And I know a few weeks back we mentioned his ability to try and score more goals. And it looks like whatever we talked about on that episode 3 weeks ago, it worked out. Alex, is this the beginning of Mitch Marner's offensive outburst and him becoming a more complete offensive threat than just a playmaker?
Well, I think so. I hope so, at least, because watching him play over these past 6 games, there are two things that I've noticed about Marner. First of all, it seems like every offseason for the past 3 years, we've heard some sort of TSN article come out say Mitch Marner's been working on his shot, but he never really shoots. So you can never really tell if his shot has actually been worked on and if he's actually been working to improvement. In these last 6 games, his shot looks more complete than it has in the past. And I think that's the number one thing that sticks out to me. I mean, if I'm going to think of a specific goal, that goal against Anaheim, the one-timer from the point, never seen Mitch Marner take a shot like that before. So I think, first of all, yes, we are starting to see a version of Marner where he's shooting more. And even like you see him on 2-on-1s and stuff too. There have been a couple times when he's held onto the puck and taken the shot instead of trying to force the pass. And that's always been Marner's biggest issue in the past, is the fact that when he's in a situation when he has the puck and he's either got a passing option or a shooting option, oftentimes the shooting option was much more likely to result in a goal than trying to pass it across, but he would still try and force the pretty pass. And I think that's the number one thing that ended up burning him in the end. And that made him such a frustrating player to watch. And obviously when Mitch Marner's at his best, you want him, like, when he's at his best, you're not really thinking about, his decision-making and stuff. But even when he is at his best, there are times when you get frustrated because he's got a clear shooting option and he tries to force the pass. And he hasn't been doing that, especially over these past 6 games. So I think that's a very telling sign. And the other thing that I've noticed about Marner is that he is playing with confidence. And the thing with a player like Mitch Marner is that he needs to have confidence if he's going to be succeeding, because all you have to do is look at the last couple of games in that series against Montreal to prove that point. Marner was not confident in game 5. He wasn't confident throughout the entire series, to be honest. He didn't score a single goal. So he was not confident in game 5, not confident in game 6, not confident in game 7. And as a result, every time he got the puck, it seemed like he was unsure of every single move that he was making. There was no authority with him. He never really picked up the puck and decided, okay, I'm going to create this play myself. It was sort of, I have the puck. What do I do with it? So Mitch Marner, yes, you can. And, yes, you can make an argument that him being overconfident at times can burn him as well. But at this point, I'd rather him be overconfident than not confident at all. And I think with the combination of those two things, between the fact that he's actually got confidence with the puck and he's taking shots when he has the opportunity to take shots, and his shots look better, I think we are starting to see maybe a different version of Mitch Marner than we've seen in the past. And I hope he can keep it up, because if he can become a shooting threat on Matthews' wing, I mean, having those two guys as shooting threats on the same line, that screams danger for any other opposing team. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come.
I think the biggest takeaway for me in regards to Mitch's game right now, he was able to get to the high danger area quite a bit in the past, but I think right now we're seeing it with more conviction and more determination, and he's more aggressive with the puck on his stick, and he's having better support and better protection with it than having to just, make a few moves into the middle and then having the puck knock loose. He's maintaining control. He's maintaining that dominance. And, the thing about Mitch Marner's game is he was always successful in drawing opponents close to him and opening the game up for his teammates. And you saw that quite a bit during this, even though he's made assists, but he's actually drawn players into him and he's still able to get the puck off and shoot it on net. So I think that's really opening up for him, and it's doing wonders for the Maple Leafs. And as you mentioned, if you have Matthews and Nylander as a shooting threat already, think about what Mitch Marner can do, especially even on the power play. And I know that at the beginning of the season, they tried to get him into that bumper spot, kind of get him more comfortable with that situation, like Braden Point in Tampa Bay. And now I'm wondering if maybe do you try and go back to that experiment right now, knowing that he can shoot the puck. And like you mentioned, that one-timer shot against Anaheim, opening himself up on and being wide open against the New York Rangers. If Marner's more comfortable with his shot right now, even if he gets in a pass from Matthews or Nylander from that half wall, and he just rips it on net, even if it's not a goal, it's still something positive and it's generating shot attempts. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that. And just looking at the future, is he going to be the X factor for them going forward?
I think there's certainly a big chance that he is going to be the X factor, because if you look back to last year's playoffs, the main storyline to take away from that series was that Matthews and Marner didn't show up and dominate the way that they should have. I mean, I didn't think there were any really glaring issues with their defense. Sure, you can nitpick and you can say, oh, well, Travis Dermott did the spinorama and threw the puck away in game 6 or, whatever. I mean, I think the Leafs team defense as a whole throughout that series wasn't an issue. I think Campbell was rock solid throughout that series, except for that one goal in game 7. Realistically, it all comes back to Matthews and Marner. And, you find yourself wondering if Matthews and Marner were playing the way they've played over these past 6 games in either of the 3 games in that Montreal series, the last 3 games in that Montreal series, would we have seen a different outcome? I think we would have. And so when you look at it that way, yes, I actually do think that Mitch Marner is going to be the X factor for this year's playoffs because, Auston Matthews, I think he took less heat because he actually scored a goal in that series and he had more points than Marner. But, you look at those 2 guys and those are your guys that you're paying the big bucks. And obviously I'm not including John Tavares in that because he only played 10 minutes of that series. But, these are the guys that you're paying $10 million, $11 million. You're getting paid like that for a reason. You got to step up and prove why you're a $10 million player and $11 million player. So looking at it that way, yes, absolutely. I think Marner is the X factor. And I hope that with his newfound confidence and, the ability that the effort that he's put into making his shot better and actually making an effort to use it more, I think there's a better chance of them making some noise in the playoffs this year, but obviously time will tell.
Yeah, I think the only difference was Matthews. Yes, he scored a goal, but also he generated quite a bit of shots. And I think he just ran into a Carey Price. And you know what? When you run into a hot Carey Price, it's tough to beat him. So think maybe that's why maybe there was a little bit less of heat on him as opposed to Marner. And just to recap the show right now, if you want to check out or not want, please go out and check out the Olympic coverage over at the Hockey Writers. Once again, we're doing a fantastic job with coverage, with team profiles, rosters, analysis, you name it. We have it over there at the Hockey Writers. And once again, Greg Boysen doing a fantastic job leading the coverage for one of the most anticipated events at the Olympics. Even though that there are no NHL players, it's always fun and exciting to watch no matter what. Now, as we get closer to March 21st, we all know that is trade deadline. There was a report from Elliot Freeman on the 31 Thoughts podcast that Josh Manson is on Toronto's no trade list. And he goes on to say that it doesn't mean that a trade can't happen. It just complicates things more. And you're going to have to give more and entice Josh Manson that, please waive your no trade clause and come over to Toronto. We got a great thing going on here. Alex, does this put in jeopardy of Toronto's ability to find a top 4 defenseman? And if so, even if they don't get Josh Manson, who is one target that you would love to be that kind of replacement for them?
So I think it's important to mention right off the hop that I think that no trade clause was actually submitted, or is no trade list of teams.
Yes,
was actually submitted before the COVID shutdown, like the initial one in 2020. Mm-hmm. So Leafs have a much different team now than they did then. So I wonder if maybe his opinions changed since then. Obviously, I don't have Josh Manson's number or anything, so I can't ask him, but you have to wonder if maybe something like that would have changed since then. But obviously in the event that it hasn't changed, I think it does make things a little more difficult, and I'm not sure it would even really be worth the effort to go out and try and make that trade. And the only reason I say that is because, if you get Josh Manson, you want to put him into a top 4 role, I would think. And if you put him alongside a Jake Muzzin, it could be a good pairing. But after seeing Muzzin's struggles this year, playing alongside a fellow slow, not necessarily a great puck-moving defenseman in Justin Hall, I don't know if having Manson alongside him would do much for Muzzin's game. And then again, you do have the option to put Sandin in the top 4 next to Manson, and then have Muzzin on the bottom pairing with someone like Timmy Liljegren. And that could be an option as well. I think those pairings would work better from a logistics standpoint, but I don't know if Sandin's ready for those top 4 minutes in the playoffs. So it's tough. I mean, if it, when you say that it makes it more difficult to try and trade for Josh Manson, I think that's the one roadblock for me, because Manson's a guy that if the Leafs traded for, I wouldn't complain at all. I think he would improve the team one way or another. He'd be better than Hall. He would be better than Travis Dermott. But is he the type of player that you want to jump over hurdles to try and acquire? That's my main concern. I don't know if it's really worth that, especially when you know that the Ducks would eventually be in the driver's seat in that situation, and they could drive up the price and really turn it into a bidding war for him. So if he's not the guy, I'm a big fan of Scott Mayfield personally from the Islanders. I think he'd be a great acquisition. And then, there's a pair of defensemen on the Blackhawks, Calvin DeHaan and Connor Murphy. I'm also super high on. I think getting either of those three guys in Toronto would really solidify their defensive core. And I think it would make their top four really legitimately stabilized. There wouldn't be any question marks. It's like, you've got your top four guys. These are the guys who are going to be shutting down other teams' opponents. And I'd feel much more comfortable having a guy like Mayfield or Connor Murphy in there versus a guy like Justin Hall. But yeah, I'm truly interested to see what Kyle Dubas does as the trade deadline gets closer, because it's, all I'm going to say is I don't envy his job or Brandon Pridham's job.
Yeah, it seems like even when we think the most expected name, which has been Josh Manson, and even Ben Sherratt's name has been thrown out there quite a bit. Again, different topic. We're not going to go there right now, but it seems like that he has pulled off a surprising move. And for me, I think none would be more surprising than if he goes to the Vegas Golden Knights and inquires about Zach Whitecloud. And again, it doesn't make sense considering that he just signed an extension, but his extension is $2.75 million for 6 years, $750K more than what Justin Hall is making right now. So obviously it's worth it. He would lead the team in goals among defensemen right now with 6. And he's capable of playing in, a top 4 role and being in a penalty kill situation. Also, it's going to be tough if he wants to get more minutes, because playing behind Pietrangelo and Theodore, and also with Jack Eichel coming back, I think you should look to them to try and clear some cap space, not just for this season, but for the future. And even though I was big on Colin Miller, he had surgery and he was out for up to 6 weeks. We are now heading into the 3rd week since he had his surgery. So I'm thinking that if he's able to make a return late February, early March, and he's able to get comfortable again, I think maybe he comes back on the Maple Leafs radar, because as soon as I saw that he had surgery, I'm like, okay, this is not going to go well. But the fact that we're halfway through his recovery time, and again, you always want to make sure that the player is healthy and able to come back. That's the most important thing. But if he is, and he plays well, because he's been pretty consistent for the Sabres this year, I think maybe you still go and look at him as well, because he is more mobile than Justin Hall, and he has that two-way mindset. You're not looking at another shutdown defender like a Manson or Mayfield, but it's just, another option right there. But we know what Kyle Dubas is thinking. We don't know what Kyle Dubas is thinking. So that's the main thing right there. And as we're basically in the second half of the season right now, I believe the Maple Leafs, if I remember, played their 42nd game against the New Jersey Devils on that back-to-back before the All-Star break. So considering that we're now in the second half, obviously the games are going to get more important. They're going to get more, it's going to come down to the wire, especially in the last month or so in March and April. That's when the playoff intensity heats up. What is going to be the most important thing in this second half for you, Alex?
Most important thing in the second half for me, I think, is just going to be ensuring that this team leaves their foot on the gas pedal and recognizes the dire situation that they're in. Because if the month of January was any indication of how the Panthers and the Lightning are going to be playing for the rest of the season, it's not going to be easy. And you know what? Everyone knows this is a good Leafs team. Everyone knows that they're capable of beating any team in the league. They beat some of the best teams in the league already. It still makes me worried seeing how good Tampa Bay is and how good Florida is. And now you've got Boston creeping back into the picture now that they've got Tuukka Rask back. It's just, the Atlantic Division is an absolute bloodbath. And, the Leafs, as much as they're comfortably in a playoff spot, and I think they'll be comfortably in a playoff spot for the rest of the season, home ice advantage is the absolute furthest thing from guaranteed. And I think getting home ice advantage is something that could be instrumental to how far the Leafs make it in the playoffs this year. Obviously, the one thing is that it's stupid the way the playoff format is right now, and the fact that one of Toronto, Tampa, and Florida is going to be eliminated in the first round. But at the same time, that's the way it is. There's nothing you can do about the playoff format. And if you want to make a deep playoff run, you're going to have to go through those teams eventually. So yeah, that's really all it comes down to. The Leafs need to recognize that there's no room to really take your foot off the gas and say, oh, well, you know what, we're one of the better teams in the division, like, et cetera, et cetera. We're in first place, coach, relax, as Jumbo Joe said last year. This is a tough division, and we're obviously ahead of a very, very busy month of February, and the schedule is only going to get longer and longer as we go until the playoffs get here. So the Leafs really, it's obviously a Captain Obvious statement to say every game matters, but that is how it is. You can brush off a loss and you can say, oh, whatever, maybe didn't deserve to win that one, or, oh, maybe we should have had that one, but whatever. It's just one game. At this point, just one game means a lot more than just, hey, it's one game. We can lose or we can win or lose. So yeah, overall, I think in terms of expectations, I just expect them to really put their foot on the gas pedal, leave it there, and be resilient against every other team they play. Because if they don't do that, then I think we might be singing the same old song in May. And obviously we don't want to be thinking about that right now. But, when you ask me what my expectations are for the team for the rest of the season, I think you just got to look at last season and say, we don't want to do that again, and use that to your advantage this year.
Game by game. That's the most important thing right now. And yeah, it's good. It's every point matters, every game matters. And that's the best part about this kind of hockey. And there was something that was running through on Twitter saying that if you were commissioner for one day, what would you change? And I would 100% get rid of this awful playoff format and go back to 1v8, because I rather see an 8-seeded team overtake the first place team and see, 3 or 4 cup contenders get, kicked out of the first round. So side note, for me, I think it's going to be one specific player. And we've talked about him before, and I think it's going to come back to Jake Muzzin. If he's able to come back and regroup and find that consistency that made him a menacing threat last season, and even in the playoffs too, because he elevated his game to whole new heights at that level. This year, again, we all know the situation, how him and Hall haven't been the strongest pairing. We've seen times where he has looked better with a different partner, TJ Brody, Timothy Liljegren on that right side. If he has someone more mobile and more aware to come back, to jump into the rush and come back, I think it alleviates more pressure on him to try and be that offensive presence. If he's able to find that consistency, and Sheldon Keefe has talked about this quite a bit, that they want to get him back on track, I think that and especially since he's dealing with a concussion, if he's able to come back stronger and he's healthier and he's in a better mindset, I think it's going to work wonders for him. And it's just going to solidify the Maple Leafs D-core, because on paper, this is a good defense unit. It's just that consistency, especially that second pairing, has been a question mark all season. So if he's able to find that consistency, I think it's going to be a real difference maker for the Maple Leafs heading down the front. And you're not heavily relying on Brody and Riley eating a lot of minutes and trying to carry the offense. You want to get some of that from Muzzin as well. Mm-hmm. That about does it for this episode of Maple Leafs Lounge. Once again, check out the fantastic Olympic coverage that we have going on in regards to the ice hockey event. Both men's and women's teams are being covered. Fantastic job. The women's teams are already in the tournament right now. Canada is absolutely looking phenomenal. USA as well. I think we're already gearing up for another Canada-USA matchup at this point. But, other teams are making a noise, and they're there to compete and play their best. And we're seeing some really great hockey on the women's side. And no doubt we're going to see it on the men's as well. Be sure to check out all the team rosters, players, formats, and also I'm tripping over my words. Rosters, profiles, and breakdowns of everything. Greg Boysen, once again, has been doing a fantastic job leading the coverage for both men's and women's hockey. Check it out. It's been great. I've been loving every single piece that has been coming out. And, I hope you do too. And I really think that I really can't say anything more about the Olympics coverage. It's been really, really great. And with that, for Alex, this is Peter Baracchini, and we will see you next time on the Maple Leafs Lounge.